Well, welcome. What's up, Region 4? Welcome to episode 5 of our Hispanic Heritage Month conversation series. My name is Jeremy Chance. I'm the Senior Coordinator of Operations with the University of Kansas. I'm here with a lot of people, but I'll next introduce my partner in this communications committee, Belinda Sanchez, Graduate Assistant of Fitness and Wellness with Texas A&M University Commerce. So we're here today on behalf of the Communications Committee for Region 4, culminating the month, Hispanic Heritage Month, and our celebration of that conversation series. So Belinda will talk a little bit more about what Hispanic Heritage Month is, but in case you've missed our conversation series so far, the first 4 episodes, we sat down with 1 or 2 of our Region 4 members to talk a little bit about their Hispanic heritage, what that means, how they celebrate it. And we figured what better way to wrap up this month than with a roundtable discussion with these folks here. So Belinda, I'll turn it over to you for a quick little info.
Thank you, Jeremy. Well, Hispanic Heritage Month is a month-long event that starts on September 15th and runs through October 15th. It starts on September 15th because it is recognized as the Independence Day of 5 Latin American countries, and many Independence Days continue to run through the month that is considered Hispanic Heritage Month. It is a time where we pay tribute to generations of Hispanic and Latinx Americans who have positively influenced and enriched our nation and our society. The celebration started off as a week-long event back in 1968. And 20 years later, in 1988, a new bill was passed into law, and Hispanic Heritage Month came into play as to what we know it as today.
All right, good little introduction about that. So why don't we go ahead and introduce our participants of the conversation. Serena, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Thank you, Jeremy. My name is Serena Rodriguez, and I'm the first-year graduate assistant at Texas A&M University at College Station.
Awesome. Armando, what about you?
Armando Espinoza, Assistant Director for Intramural Sports here at Kansas State University. I've been here since, I think, 2008, so quite a while.
All right, Victoria.
Hi, I'm Victoria Lopez-Herrera, and I am the Senior Associate Director for Campus Recreation at the University of Texas in San Antonio, and I identify as Latina and Chicana.
Awesome. Ari, how about you?
Hold on. Hi, my name is, not a fan of Zoom. My name is Ari Servedio. I'm the Senior Associate Director of Campus Recreation at the University of Central Arkansas, and I identify as Hispanic.
Awesome. Welcome. And Carlos.
Yes, good afternoon. Carlos Garcia, Aquatics Director at Texas A&M in College Station, Texas. And I identify as Latino.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We're excited. We've got a few returners to our conversation series, but for Carlos and Ari, first-time participants. So Ari, we'll go to you first. Talk to us a little bit about your pathway to your current role.
Okay, well, I started my undergraduate in physical education in New York City at Herbert H. Lehman College. I graduated with a degree in physical education. I taught part-time PE in 2 Catholic schools, and that's when I realized you don't need to work with children. Raised by a Hispanic mom, when you say sit, you're supposed to sit. First grade children would not sit. So I said, okay, I need to find another career. Then I had the opportunity to work in corporate fitness for about a year. At that point, my then boyfriend had been accepted into the Ohio State University's PhD program in exercise physiology. While working in corporate fitness, I fell in love with Lifetime Fitness. Was my passion, and I started getting more interested in it. So while I was in corporate fitness, they were willing to pay for my education to go to school, of course, if I maintained certain grades. But I lived in the Bronx, I worked in Manhattan, and I would be going to school at Queens College, traveling 3 of the 5 boroughs in New York City. that was not appealing to me. And I decided to apply for a graduate assistantship at The Ohio State University and said, let's see what happens. Lo and behold, I was accepted. I am positive that that was courtesy of affirmative action. I was female, Hispanic, with good grades. I'm sure I checked off some boxes for them. And I'm forever grateful to affirmative action because I think I have rewarded that program by becoming a successful professional, a citizen who is contributing, and I have raised two Hispanic daughters who are also college grads and contributing to our country and our communities through our tax dollars, which is very important. After going through The Ohio State University, I was majoring in exercise science in the PhD program. I did not complete it. I left with my master's because my then boyfriend became my husband, and he went to complete his postdoc after he graduated a year before me. And I decided if I get a PhD, I'm overqualifying myself for what I love, lifetime fitness. I did not want to teach higher ed, and I did not want to do research, two things I enjoyed, but not as a profession. So we started a family, and for 12 years, I put my degrees in a drawer and decided to be a stay-at-home mom. In 1999, I took my first professional job with the American Heart Association. I had been a volunteer for them for 2 years because now we lived in Conway, Arkansas, and I was jump rope for heart specialist. I love that job, but I had a second grader and a sixth grader, and it required me traveling 35 out of 70 counties in Arkansas, leaving like at 5 in the morning, returning at 6, and I realized I love this job, but my children are only going to be young once. And one Sunday morning, I was reading the paper and the position here at UCA, I saw that, and they were looking for a fitness center director. And I was looking at all the requirements. I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. This job has my name on it. So I started as the fitness center director back in 2001, July of 2001. Fast forward 21 years later, here I am with being the Senior Associate Director of Campus Recreation, and God willing, in 5 or 6 years, one of you all can apply for this job.
That's awesome. That sounds like quite the journey. Well, we're very happy to have you. Carlos, what about you? Talk a little bit about your journey to your current role.
Yeah, so my role is a little different. I started in 2002 with working for a nonprofit organization, doing sports camps and working at a Christian-based camp. Fast forward to 2006, we all know what happened. The economics got a little tough, kind of like what they are right now. So I was living with a roommate who was working at the rec center. I had transitioned from East Texas to South Texas. So I was living in San Antonio and going to UTSA, so there in San Antonio, and was a student and just kind of said, hey, I need a job. And I went from outdoors and camps to facilities. So worked through the ranks there. So I joked that I was hired 3 different times at UTSA because I went from facilities and then moved up the ranks, went to aquatics, went up the ranks, and then got hired on as the aquatics coordinator, and then moved up the ranks there to finally be an assistant director. They're all at UTSA. So I was at UTSA from 2006 to 2016. And so was very fortunate to have three people that believed in me, that mentored me. One being Laura Monroe, the director there, the senior associate director at the time that was there, Mark Munguia, and then the associate director that was there at the time was Tony Daniels. So they all kind of poured into me, kind of developed me during my time as an undergrad and then into the professional role. So I didn't have the traditional graduate assistantship and everything else. So definitely a lot of learning that went on during my tenure there. Was able to do one athletic project that was the collaboration with, it was an athletic and campus recreation collaboration where the field complex expansion, so where the football team practiced and everything else, and we're gaining field space as well. And then the pool that is at UTSA was another major project that I was a part of before leaving. Then 2016, got the opportunity to go down to UT Rio Grande Valley down in Edinburgh, Texas. And so went down to the Valley, was there for 2 years. Got to do a couple of projects there as well. Got to work with some great people there as well. And then got the opportunity to come now to the University of, or Texas A&M University and College Station, Texas. And I've been here since 18 to present time. And now I'm the director of Aquatics.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey, Carlos.
No
I'm sure that there are plenty of individuals watching that can relate to your story and your journey. Each of us has had a different journey, a different story, and a different reason why we chose campus recreation. So I'm going to go ahead and go down the line. We're going to start with Victoria. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you chose to stay in campus recreation?
Most of my background in higher education has been in residence life, and I was a fraternity and sorority advisor. And through all of that, was able to identify transferable skills that could get me into collegiate recreation. I entered specifically focusing on student development, student leadership, training, those kinds of things. And through residence life and fraternity and sorority life, we're all about building leaders. So everybody is pretty similar, you know, when it comes to investing in students and that way. And what I often tell my other higher ed colleagues that I'm still connected with in residence life and in fraternity and sorority life is that collegiate rec it's where it's at. It's some good stuff. And I think that we also are uniquely positioned to where we focus not only on student well-being, but we also have the opportunity to focus on our own personal well-being too. And in higher education, we're very much focused on always serving the student, and which we center the student, which is absolutely what our work is about. And oftentimes we don't necessarily focus on ourselves. So I feel very fortunate to have been able to see those connections and leverage my previous experience to then be able to step into collegiate rec.
That is very wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing, Victoria. Armando, why did you choose to stay in campus recreation?
You know, I think my entry into campus rec in general was kind of by pure dumb luck. We talked about it last time, but it's, you know, I started as an intramural flag football official at the University of Texas simply because I had nothing else to do and a friend needed a job. And he didn't want to go by himself. It was that simple. And the more I got involved, the more I started expanding the sports that I was working and becoming a supervisor and program assistant and all that, the more I just came to the realization that it's an environment that I don't see it as work. I get to work with people from all sorts of backgrounds and experience levels, and even now here at Kansas State University, with most of the a good chunk of the student body here at K-State comes from Western Kansas and a lot of rural farm towns, that type of settings. And even that group is, you know, you would think is simply like wash, repeat. It's always a mystery of what kind of person you're going to interact with and what kind of lessons you can learn, not only from them, but you can share with them. So my deal is all basically the interactions and enjoying what I do. So I never see it as actual work itself. And I come to work every day looking for what the next day is going to have for me. So that's really what appeals to me the most.
Thank you for sharing, Armando. We all have very different reasons to why we stay in campus recreation, and there's always that one person that showed us the ropes and allowed us to fall in love with this field. So Serena, is there any individual, or maybe even two, who has influenced you on your career path?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I would say it would be more of the professional staff during my undergrad at the University of Colorado Springs. I was a transfer student from San Diego, California, and I was a sport management student. I wanted to get a foot in the door into the sport industry, and I thought campus recreation. But, I was living on campus. I could walk to work. It was a great time. So I went in. there is a train going by, and that is a cool part of Texas A&M University. We have a train that goes through campus, so it is going by right now. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. I became an intramural official, and then from there, my pro staff at UCCS gave me the opportunity to advance in campus recreation by I applied. They had a scholarship opportunity to attend the NIRSA National Conference in Denver. So I was awarded that scholarship, and I got to attend that conference. And just being in that conference really opened the gates for me, and that was the light bulb that turned on, and that is why I decided to pursue a graduate assistantship. I applied to everything out there, and I ended up at Texas A&M. And I'm really, I'm really proud that I'm here today, and I to represent Latinas and to, just to gain more information.
Serena, thank you so much for sharing. Does anybody else have a mentor or maybe two mentors that they would maybe like to acknowledge at this point?
I'll go ahead. So just like Serena's situation, you start working for somebody who's doing this full time, and they have a very, very significant impact. For most people, at least, a lot of the professionals in the field are very good at their jobs. For me, my first boss was Garcia at Texas. And, I was probably a little on the immature and maybe not well-versed into thinking outside the box. So if it wasn't for her, I probably would never have started to question the way I think about things. So her, and then in combination with Chad McKenzie and Randall Ford and that triumvirate of intramural staff there at Texas, it really pushed me in the right direction as far as just thinking outside the box, and questioning things and understand the intent. And I credit them 100% to not only me being in the field, but finding something that I truly enjoy doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I would say just kind of throughout your career and throughout your career path, you'll continue to reach out to your mentors to continue to build, because no matter what you face, they've already dealt with that in their career paths, or it's like they're still giving you knowledge, even though you've been in the field, whether it be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, they continue to just shape and mold you. And so therefore you just continue to keep those people close. And sometimes a simple conversation that you'll have at a conference or a round table, people will take that away for the rest of their lives, and then they'll keep in contact with you and then just continue to reach out. So even if you're having a minimal conversation, sometimes you don't realize, even when you're going to places or you're representing the schools that you're working at, whenever you're speaking, a lot of people actually are paying attention and saying, oh yeah, I had never thought this way, or oh yeah, that's one way I can challenge myself and continue to grow and kind of just moving forward, because there are a lot of barriers. And then for one instance, I was at a conference and I was talking to my mentor. We were getting coffee, and a student came up and he goes, hey, I'm gonna come, can I ask y'all questions? Because I'm Latino and I see y'all two are Latinos. Tell me a little bit how you got started and what can I do? How can I get to your level? And we both kind of chuckled a little and said, no, you don't want to be at our level, you want to do better. And so that's one of the things that young man still contacts me today. He kept my card. I transitioned schools, went to a different conference. His boss at the time saw me. He goes, hey, I didn't realize you were still in the field. Can he contact me? I said, yeah, cell number's still the same. Calls me within 24 hours. So that's what I'm saying. That no matter where you're at, you can always give some advice or give that piece, whether you're a mentor or you're with your mentors, but always continue to have those conversations. And so that's one of the things, and that's how my mentors, and I said them earlier, have continued to do for me. So.
Yeah, I'd like to say the original director that I started working for back in 2001, he was extremely supportive in that there was not a program I could bring up that he wouldn't let me try. he retired just shortly after we opened our expansion and renovation of our building in 2015. And since then, we've gotten a new director who came to us with 20 years of campus recreation. Our previous director, as wonderful as he was, Dave Dennis, he was not from a campus rec background. So really when we were working, we were really run more as a gym than campus recreation. Even though I might have been doing some trainings that I later on came to learn, hey, this is student development. When my new director came on board, that was something that he is also very supportive. And I found to myself that we share a lot of things. I was just not using the terminology that campus recreation has been using for all of these years before I was ever introduced to campus recreation. I came on board with the fitness, lifetime fitness. My job was to try to provide programs for students to come and improve their health and wellness and socialize. When our new director came on board, he said, well, the focus of campus recreation is student development. And I went, what? So it was an eye-opener for me, because for the majority of my tenure here, we were under a different director. I loved both of them, but as Carlos was saying, I look at my job more as mentoring them, the students, and developing them. There's nothing better than to have a student that used to work for you 6 years ago who runs into you in Walmart and they go, Miss Hottie, and they run in to give you a hug and a kiss when you fired them the first time they were working for you, because they learned, and you extend grace and you teach them about responsibility and the transferable skills, as Victoria was saying. That to me is the passion of my job now. Lifetime fitness, of course, but the development to students, because as Victoria said, our tagline used to be students first. That's our job when we come to work every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think y'all have again highlighted some incredible people in the field. We'll transition a little bit to talk about, why we're here, what we're here to celebrate, and that's Hispanic Heritage Month. This is gonna be a super broad question, and whoever wants to chime in can. What does Hispanic Heritage Month mean to you, or how do you celebrate it? Anybody wants to take that one first? What does Hispanic Heritage Month mean to you?
I'd like to jump in because
Sure.
Sadly for me, it really does not have much of the meaning. I left New York City in 1982. I left mi gente, you all know what that means, in 1982, and moving to Columbus, Ohio, then to Dayton, Ohio, then to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and then ending up in Arkansas, I was removed from my culture. I was removed from my food. I got to see my family once a year if my family came to visit. Through Facebook, I was able to reconnect with my friends that I grew up with back to junior high school and elementary. And it's sad for me because Hispanic Month, it really doesn't mean anything to me because I have really no one here in Arkansas to share it with. And I'm not familiar with everything that I grew up with as a child up to the point where I left New York City, sadly. And sadly, my children do not speak Spanish. Imagine a Puerto Rican with a Southern accent talking Spanish. It was just too much.
I'll just jump in real quick and kind of echo some of the same sentiments in that here in Kansas, at least in the part of the state that I'm in, there's not a whole lot of Hispanic influence altogether. And really when it comes to this, the month itself, I don't necessarily do anything differently than I normally would. So what it actually means to me, like, I kind of go back to my father's experiences. He grew up in a little small pueblo in Mexico called La Pesita. And I mean, we're talking dirt roads, like no public water. I mean, that kind of situation. And at some point he made it, the cross to the US and did everything. I mean, he's had 2 full-time jobs his entire life to provide for his family. And, so when I look back at this month, I think of, we're in a situation where opportunities are out there for the taking. So it's more of a reminder for me not to squander opportunity in general, and make it not only better for yourself, but people around you as well. And to spread that good vibe, as a general thought. So that's the way I kind of think of the month itself.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that. I know for me and my family, it's a time to reflect, and it's basically looking about where we came from, and being first gen, being the first one in my family to get an undergraduate degree, first one to get a master's degree. So that means a lot. And looking at the sacrifices that both my parents had to do in order to get me those opportunities, give me the ability to take advantage of that, things that they didn't get a chance to do. And so this whole month, we celebrate independence and we celebrate fiestas and then Dia de los Muertos. And a lot of people didn't really grasp that in the Latino culture. Thank goodness for Pixar, right? Coco came out. Then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, this is what it is. This is what we want to celebrate this. We want to do that. So, and to this day in my family, like me and my wife right now, we get friends and we explain what it is, and we have an ofrenda and we get them involved and we watch Coco, and just to kind of bring it all together. But that's little traditions that we're starting with my family, my little family right now. And so it's a big time to reflect on the ones who have had tremendous sacrifices or have broken down barriers for you. And so if you go back and look back, and you can look at all these things that people have done. And one of the other things is Latin Explosion is it was a documentary series that HBO did, and it talks about all the Latino barriers and everything else from the 50s, 60s to today, of all the barriers that have been broken throughout, the decades. And so I think this month is, and to be honest with you, we just celebrated like that in my household. But when I moved to San Antonio and I was at UTSA, that's when I first started grasping all this is this, and I got more involved in it. So it wasn't until, 2006, 2007 when all that started happening. But that's the one thing that we reflect on during this time.
To add to the reflection, I think it's also about learning. And Aris, you talked about, for me, for you in your journey and where you are. To me, it's also learning and hope and recognition that you can go back, you can get back to your Boricua roots, right? You can still learn that, and you can pass that on to your children. And the fact that this marks in our country, we matter. We are present, we exist. So regardless of where you are in your own path, in your own journey, in your own identity development, it's an opportunity to say, hey, I'm here. I matter. And mi gente matters. So similar to Carlos, it wasn't until maybe like 10 years ago that I started to practice observing Dia de los Muertos and thinking more about my own personal indigenous roots. And since being in San Antonio, again, our responsibility and where we are on this land, and in particular in the indigenous land of Yanaguana, right? And being able to reference San Antonio as Yanaguana, and that becomes part of the lexicon of what we use and how we reference where we are, space, our connection to the land, what we're occupying. It opens the opportunity for that dialogue. For us to not only just celebrate, but also get into the nitty gritty, because, we got issues too. You know what I'm saying? Like gente, we got stuff that we got to talk about, and we need to come together and talk about it. And how are we going to continue to be represented? How are we going to continue to matter in this country? Like, those are the other big issues too. And I feel like it's a time during the year, there's an opportunity for the platform to be present and for others to recognize and others to engage in the dialogue with us. You're muted, Aris.
Unmute. I like to follow up on that. I don't think about it during the month. I'm thinking, oh, it's Hispanic month. Okay, I wasn't even aware, but I have my Puerto Rican flag. I have my Puerto Rico mug. When I meet people, I introduce myself. Servedio is my ex-husband's name. He's Italian. Santiago is my maiden name. So when a lot of people, they look at me and they're talking to me, they don't realize, they think I'm white. And when I start talking about who I am, I'm, the youngest of 7. I was born in Puerto Rico. I identify as Hispanic because that was my first language. I started first grade, could not speak a lick of English. And that's one thing that my mother, when she left Puerto Rico, she was a single mom with 6 children because one of her younger children passed before the girls were born. And, you know, I think it was Carlos might have been, or maybe Armando was saying, the sacrifices that our parents did for us, that is something that I take to heart, because I myself also am the first one to graduate from college. My mother had a 6th grade education, and she said, finish high school. That to her was, you've got it made to get the American dream. And then when I was in school, my junior high school teachers, they were big mentors in me continuing on to higher ed, because they said, what college are you going to go to? And I was like, what's college? They pushed a lot of young Puerto Rican, Dominican, Black children in New York City to look outside of their community and look at the world, that we are a global community. And that is tremendous. And sadly for me, I don't have that for mi gente to focus on. So I do the focus on the students that come through my door, and they come through here to mentor them to do better.
Thank you all for sharing your heritage with us and how you identify. All of that is just so important, because we come from all different parts. There's just not one version of what it means to be a Latino or one version of what it means to be a Hispanic. There are so many realms. So when did you first realize or acknowledge your identity as a Hispanic and or Latinx individual?
I'll go ahead and start with that question. So I would say it was like when I was born, like the first few years, my maternal grandparents, they spoke only Spanish, and that's how like I got to understand. And as well, I grew up 8-10 miles away from the Mexican border in the city of El Centro, California, which borders Mexicali, which is a big metro area of Mexico. So just growing up, and my grandparents would take care of me and they would speak Spanish, and that's how I started to learn a little bit of Spanish. In my household, we spoke English, but that's how I decided to realize that I was Mexican. And when it came to the holidays too, just our family traditions that we would have, that's how I started to recognize as well. And then when I started grade school, some of my classmates, they didn't speak any English. I did. And that's when I started to realize, oh, like this is what it is. And I was like, we're a little bit different because, our language barrier, but at the same time, our background is the same. And that's just how I recognize that. And then I moved from El Centro to San Diego, where I'm, 10 miles away, 15 miles away from the Tijuana border. And that same, as well, in community college, I had other people that, they cross the border every day just to get education here, like in San Diego. So that's just how I recognize that. And that's when I realized that of my heritage.
I think as a child, just like Serena, when you finally realize that there's another language out there, because there was only Spanish spoken at home. And I will take that back. I didn't know one phrase in English before I started school. I learned from playing with the kids. And I came home to my mom and she said something to me and I went, get the hell out of here. You know what I got? I had no idea. Una pecosa al revés. I was like, so she said, you don't say that. So I learned, stick to the language and do not try. I just heard the kids in the neighborhood and they would say that. I was like, I'm cool. So I guess from growing up, when you finally realize that there is a difference in you than your other friends that you are associating with when you're socializing.
I was thinking about this concept of when you determine or when you realize the difference, right? And I'll share a story with you that's kind of interesting in my opinion, at least. So my mother was born here. My father was born in Mexico. Both languages were spoken in the household growing up. So I from early on age, I knew both languages. So, and I was generally speaking like pretty good at academics in general. So I was a little ahead of my classes in general. But the thing that stands out to me the most was for like kindergarten to third, I went to one elementary school. And then fourth grade through sixth, I went to a different one. And when I transferred, I found it interesting that because I don't know the reasons, but I could just take a guess that I was Hispanic. They tried to put me in English as a second language class, right? And well, my mother was kind of furious with the situation, and the whole time I was like, and the reason for it would be because my English language skills would not be up to par, right? Even though in that year I finished with the highest grade point average of everybody in the school, I have no problem with English, so on, so on. So it made no sense for me to be in that class to begin with. But I think that's the realization that I came to, at least at some level, I was viewed differently in society, even though maybe I probably already knew it, you know, growing up and all that. So it was more of a realization that at some level, people try to categorize people differently based on different backgrounds. For the record, I was taken out of the class after a couple weeks, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I'd have to say, kind of like they've already shared, it's basically when you're at a young age and you're looking whether you're playing sports and you look different from everybody else, or there's the language, right? So me speaking, you would never think that Spanish was my first language, but it is. And so I'm fluent. And so because I don't have an accent or anything like that, kind of like what he was just talking about is like that segregation of the ESL student, right? And you get that marking or that stigma put on you. There's a lot of times that friends would walk the hallways and like, all right, see you after school. I'm going this way with all the Caucasian kids. And then all the Latinos are going this way to ESL. And so that's why it's kind of like, why is Carlos going that way? And we're all hanging out. And they're like, no, you need development, is what they used to tell them. And so that was kind of, to me, it was kind of like, wait a minute. And then it wasn't until about 2 years ago, one of the teachers, my mom was talking to her and she's long retired, and she said, oh, we used to put kids in those classes and things so that we would have jobs. And so they would mark certain students. And so when I heard that, I was like, that's where it's broken. It's versus trying to keep people, you know, moving forward. They're marking people at such a young age and putting that stigma on them and then moving them into those different classes. So that kind of, you know, looking back at it, you know, so many years later and just like the system's broken. So how do we get there? What do we do now? So when we're developing these students at the college level and they say they want to go into education, they want to go into teaching or everything else, we're trying to teach them not to do those, not to do the same mistakes that we've learned from, and break down those barriers for those students and the future students coming. And so that's some of the things that kind of, it's like, when do you recognize that? And then kids will recognize it at a young age. We go back and try to think, when do we start recognizing that? Now the kids, because of social media and the technology that they have and everything else, they're looking at it probably at a different lens. And they're saying, I'm learning more and more about my ethnicity, my background, whatever, at a younger age. So now they're going to have a different perspective on it in their background. And so that's something that, you know, looking back and how we identify and when that was when, for me, it was at a younger age, is first grade. So.
I have similar experiences of othering, right? So when are those times? And for me, it's been when I'm the other, playing with Barbies and none of them had brown hair. All my friends in school were white. Growing up in Texas, learning about the Alamo and Texas history from that lens, from the winner side versus the loser side. And I really remember when we were learning about General Santa Anna, the Santa Ana de Lopez, and feeling a lot of shame because I shared the same last name. And as I able to reflect as an adult, and obviously being able to go to college and then being able to hear another story, another side of it, learn the other side of that story, the power and the power where it exists, who has that power, and as Carlos was saying, the systems in place, who has control over that narrative. So I feel like it's been a journey of recognizing where the implicit bias is, who has the power, what are the structures, and then what is my personal agency now as an educated Latina to be able to challenge those systems. And now as a parent, my responsibility for 2 other little brown kids to help them navigate this system and work our way through it.
Awesome. I mean, as a white person on this panel, I think it's really education. I'm really glad to hear these, because that's something is I have representation. I don't have to seek out representation up and down the ladder. It's very evident for people who look like me, but that hasn't been the same for Hispanic people. So question to, again, open-ended, whoever wants to pick it first, maybe specific to our field of campus recreation, how would you assess Hispanic representation in our industry? And then Carlos, I think you said you highlighted this really well. You know, what does it mean to see other people, Hispanic origin, in our field?
When I think about the field, and specifically when about representation of the Latinx community, I think it's hard to be able to really identify that and put your finger and say, how represented are we? Because we come in every color and we are mixed. And some people identify closer with some of their, you know, indigenous or Asian or Black roots than they do versus their Latino roots, right? So it's hard. I think that being able to volunteer for NIRSA and being in different circles, I've been able to meet a lot of Latinos and people who represent the Latinx community, but it's still small, right? And what I do hear though is that and the same thing we're talking about systems, right? The system necessarily was not created for us, nor does it have pathways for continuing to open up or maybe take down some barriers. I think specifically in conversations that I've had with women of color that are in the fitness specific area, the representation that is seen in the industry and a big scope does not represent women who don't fit into the very slender, white, blonde-haired, you know, view. So when people are investing or thinking about hiring practices, thinking about who are they going to have in front of the room if people want to attend those classes, that is a very real barrier for people in the fitness in that particular area. I also serve on the board of AOR, and in AOR we talk a lot about the master narrative is of white bearded men in plaid shirts with these like awesome gear, right? With hundreds of dollars of gear going up some mountain or kayaking this amazing national park. You have to have the resources to be able to do that. You have to be able to see that you can show up in your chancletas and your picnic basket and you're gonna go walk out there, you know, like just feel to feel that way. So I think in relation, y'all are laughing at me because you know it's true. I'm gonna show right, it's hard. So it's not, the representation isn't there, and I think that there's an opportunity for there to be more. We just have to be able to recognize how can we open that up and be more responsive, more representative and opening to. So thinking about just Hispanic Heritage Month as an example, right? It's like an opportunity to take a pause, but also to say like, we're here, right? Like we estamos presente, like we're here. So how do we do that in different ways? How can we amplify that and maybe integrate it into different methods, different opportunities within collegiate rec?
Any other thoughts there?
I think Victoria did a great job.
You did do a great job, Victoria. You hit all of the points that were, I guess, in all of our thoughts. We are close to hitting the hour mark. We have maybe about 13 minutes left. So I do want to wrap up with one final question for all of you here. So how can allies or any other individuals join you in celebrating Hispanic heritage, whether it's during Hispanic Heritage Month or year-round?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, it's like because of Coco, the movie and everything else, we brought different people from different backgrounds and just kind of shared that with them. The other thing that we typically do is we try to do once a month. We get together with friends around and we say, okay, pick a dish that you grew up with in your background and cook dinner for 8, right? Because of COVID and everything, we got to keep our numbers down. So we're like 8 people, and then we just rotate and we kind of take it to their house, drop it off, or we'll eat outside, kind of like Victoria was saying, in a picnic basket, just kind of spread out and eat it there. But that's one of the things, is that just being open and sharing your culture and your dishes and recipes, and talk about where it came from and family and how it came about. Or as you're cooking at the house, if you feel comfortable with having people at your house, right, to show them how to make it. You know, I was showing somebody how to make tortillas a couple of weeks ago from scratch. And so everybody's like, how did you learn this? Well, my grandma taught me how to do this, how to do that. So there's things like that that you can do to kind of share that experience in your background.
Yeah, I would like to follow up with that with Carlos. Back in Colorado, that's what I did. I cooked enchiladas for my roommates and their friends, and I got to show them, like, you know, this is what I really like, and this is, like, you know, I'm gonna share this with you. And we had like a game night and like movie night as well. So like that was just a great experience as well. And then, you know, here at A&M, the other GAs, I keep telling them, like, I need to show you some good carne asada, because all this stuff that you're having here, it's not cutting it. So that's just how I did, like, here, that's how I am over here.
For me, it was a little difficult. I can't find ingredients. Do you guys have guineos verde, green bananas? Not plátanos. We can get those at Walmart, but certain foods and spices that you can't get, the Walmart is doing better with Goya, and so is Kroger. But I did start with my children, like Christmas Eve dinner, arroz con gandules, pernil, things like that. I can't make pasteles, which is the equivalent of tamales, which I love, but I do share some things with my family, but not as much as I wish I had over the years.
Anybody, anything else to add?
Just with one last thing real quick. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
And it goes back to my experience as a small kid being put in ESL. We're all very, very wide range of backgrounds and skills and talents, and no different than anybody else out there. I would just encourage people not to have preconceived notions, and, you know, verify what skill set people have. You know, this week I can't remember who it was, but somebody's kids don't speak Spanish, right? Somebody might assume that you speak Spanish simply because you're a little darker skinned, you know? So it just goes back to that thought process, like, understand that there may be a higher likelihood that this person might be bilingual, but don't verify those things, and don't assume that these things are true as you interact with the Latino community as a whole, in general.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that anytime that we're at conferences, when that happens again, or we do it, you know, via, you know, Region 4 conferences coming up, whether we're on Zoom, if you have questions or wanted to just ask, take the time to say, hey, can I Zoom you later? Don't be ashamed to just be like, man, I wish I would have contacted so-and-so. Go ahead and step out of your comfort zone and just say, hey, would you mind setting up a time where we can just I have questions about the field, have questions on how you got started or whatnot. And I encourage students to just take the time and ask the professional staff of, no matter who they are, take the time and just say, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time? One of the things that I love to do at conferences is take a student to lunch. Because yes, I'm paying for them to eat, but at the same time, I'm getting to know who they are and what they're inspiring to be and where they're inspiring to go, whether it's rec sports or teaching or the medical field, law school, whatever it may be. That's fine, but sometimes they don't know how to approach a pro staff member or approach someone of color. So that's one of the things, is that everybody here on the screen, I'm pretty sure, is welcoming of anybody who reaches out. So definitely take the time and reach out, and then just go from there.
Yeah, Carlos, you brought up that great point. We may not be able to get together with the Region 4 family in person, but we do have, thanks for the shout out, the Region 4 virtual conference coming up in a couple weeks. Registration is now open, so just a little plug here. It's free thanks to some really generous sponsors. It's from October 26th through the 29th. It's a variety of educational sessions, some area-specific roundtables, our state and regional meetings. But I think more importantly, Carlos, to your point, it's an opportunity to connect with the family across, from the comforts of our home or our offices, but, kind of get in front of some people that we wouldn't normally be able to connect with. So again, it's that opportunity for professional development, but also personal connection with the Region 4 family. So with that, we'd like to thank our panelists for the conversation today. It's really been a great opportunity to hear about your stories, your paths to where you are now, the struggles that you and your families and those that have come before you've dealt with. But we're, the Region 4 family is really proud to have you as a member of our family. And Belinda, anything to add there?
Just thank you for being representatives of Hispanics and Latinx, and thank you for being where you are and who you are, and being someone that I can look up to, and that many people, not just from the region, but from your universities and from the NIRSA family as well.
Awesome. Thanks again. All right, Region 4, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Okay, I stopped the